Hi, my name is Casey Clark. Welcome to our apiary. This is my video submittal for a hive colony inspection for the Cornell Master Beekeeper Certificate Program. Our apiary is located here on our farm in Middleburg, Virginia. We are diversified organic vegetables, so we use our bees primarily for pollination, though we do take honey off and we give that to visitors to our farm. If you take a look around, our colonies are located facing the southeast. There's our southeast sky. The sun is currently up behind some clouds, so our bees are returning in anticipation of a thunderstorm. But they are located under an oak tree. This provides dappled light throughout the day. We have water located over near the greenhouse and a bird bath essentially with gravel, and one at the end of the row of hives as well. Additionally, there is a stream just over my wife's shoulder who is filming us, and that is also providing water for the bees. This location was chosen because of the tree, the southern exposure, and in all honesty, proximity to our home. I figured colonies closer to us are easier for me to manage. So that's why our primary apiary site is located close to our home. One of the negatives to it being here is the fact that this is the center of our operations. We have many visitors coming through, so at times people are nervous about the bees. That's my main concern with the location here, but we address that with some signage, and also we speak to our visitors new visitors before they arrive and make sure they're comfortable with the bees. Another negative is that, well, actually that's the main negative, but one of the positives I want to talk about is the fact that we do have trees located behind our house, as well as on the western side and the eastern side, which provide plenty of good cover for wind block for the bees. This is very important during the winter especially. Overall, it's a great location for the colony. I'll be inspecting this box today. This is colony 5, just for my own records. And we'll take a look. Before I open up the box, we'll just take a look at the entrance here. It's pretty calm in the front right now. We see some bees bringing in pollen in their pollen baskets. A few minutes ago I also saw some propolis coming in. So I'm just looking, seeing what's going on. We see some guard bees at the very entrance. They don't seem too concerned, and we see a lot of fanning at the beginning. There was much more earlier when the sun was in full shine, but the clouds have moved in and it's calmed down. So these guys are returning from foraging, and they all seem pretty calm, although I am in the flight path, so they're starting to stack up behind me. But this is what I'll take a look at typically before I open, just to make sure things seem calm and get an idea of what's coming on. We have a few coming in fairly heavy in their landing, which there's pollen right there, and some coming in fairly heavy with their landing, which is telling me that possibly they're bringing in water or possibly nectar. We're not in a dearth yet, but we'll be approaching that in Virginia. We're in the third week of August in Virginia, so typically we start, the nectar flow starts to drop off right about now. So I'll move around the back and we'll get started on the inspection. Before I inspect, I just do a quick little puff in the front, just to calm the girls down a little bit. Not much. And we'll go into the top box. I'm currently using medium supers. I have a few deep supers, but most of my operation is done on medium supers. The reason being is, one, they're lighter, but a lot of this was given to us by friends and family. And this is the equipment they had available, so I feel we should work with what we have. So we stayed with medium supers, and they seem to be working quite well, especially when we bring students out here and to work with the colonies. And it's easier for them to lift when I need help lifting things. So our crew. We have 4 guys working with us. When I say guys, it's guys and girls. But we want to make sure that all of us can help out. Pretty hot here in Virginia, so we put screens on. Those most likely will be coming off in the next couple of weeks. If we take a look into the box here, I do have a queen excluder on this one, which I use on some colonies and not on others. I'm just trying to get a real feel for how it affects the honey production for the bees. So I do use it on some. This one does have a queen excluder on here. So the top has some honey in it. We did take honey off of this about 2 weeks ago, and we can look in. If we look in here, this is a 9-frame box, and if I look in, it looks to be about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8.5 frames of bees are on here right now. So it's doing pretty well. I'm just going to pull 1 or 2 of these up. I know there's a honey excluder. I'm going to pull 1 or 2 up just to get an idea of whether there is nectar coming in and what kind of progress they're making with honey. But I won't move down through it too much because we want to really see what's going on inside the brood chambers. So I pull up this plastic frame. This went in basically because we were in a rush to get frames in. So typically I would like to use drawn comb, but we're using a bit more plastic now. You can see here the honey is set. Just do a little blow on here. And there's uncapped honey here that they have dove into. And that's pretty much because of the smoke. So not much going on in that frame. We see this frame here. There's more wax that they built. And we'll take a look at this one as well. Lots of propolis. I'm trying to break that here. There we go. A bit more honey on here. It weighs quite a bit more. You can see. And all capped honey. I don't see a lot of nectar in there. So we'll get a better feel for that as we go deeper into the colony. So I'm going to remove this box and place it on top of the lid here. And I make a point to keep the front of this orientated to the front of the hive box, the rest of the hive boxes. That way there's not confusion when I go to put it back on. I try to maintain consistency. I always do it the same way. That way I shouldn't say never, but it's much easier for me to keep track of which way the hive should be orientated. There we go. First box off. There we go, located. I just keep the front painted front and I caddy just a little bit. That way it's elevated and I'm less likely to squish more bees. I'm going to run my hive tool along the edge of the queen excluder. This way when I go to pull it off, it doesn't pop as much and stress the bees as much as if I just were to rip it off and it pop and anger the bees. Look at that one, get a little puff in there. Noting the direction of the wind so that it actually does enter the colony. And I'm going to slowly pull this off. And you'll see some of the popping. It's kind of hard to prevent it completely that I'm referring to that can upset the bees. So I just move slowly. Just a gentle peel. They tend to seal this onto the top of their frames in there fairly quickly. Oh, there we go. That was one of the pops that I was hoping to avoid. Just a little calm down here. So we've got three boxes. We're going to see if we have brood chambers in each of those. There are 10 frames in this. So these blonde boxes I know are 10 frames. So this is 10 frames. If I look in, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 frames of bees in this box here. I'm going to remove frame number 2 if I count from right to left. This is number 2. You could left to right, but this is the way I work. I'll pull this frame just to provide myself room, and I'll place that onto my hive stands, which I've built so that they will hold a frame and I don't have to worry about leaning it against anything or hanging it from the side of the box. I can just drop it right into the frame. So I'll pull this one up slowly so as not to, or minimize squishing any bees. Take a look up, and you can see that's some nice capped honey. It's been capped for a little while, pushed right on there. So we know we've got plenty of food in there, and they're building up what look like new wax in the top box. So it appears that they are still bringing in nectar. I'll take a look at frame number 1, but I would think that that's going to be capped honey as well. So I'm not really, this whole top box here, or second box down, I'm not expecting to see much going on, but I'll quickly move through them to make sure I don't have any brood, and if I can see anything on there. More capped honey. Oh, here we've got some open cells here, but if you take a look into the open cells, you can see there is nectar in there, so they're bringing in nectar. And in the center there, which this may be the top of the brood ball itself, we see some bee bread, which is where they mix their pollen with nectar. So that's good. We should probably see more of that as we move into the center. I'm also paying attention as I lift this out along the edges here. This is where occasionally you'll see the larvae of wax moths or scurrying small hive beetles. I want to look for that, pay attention to that, see if I need to manage for that. We see here more bee bread, more nectar. Place that right back in. Our girls are behaving well for us today as I inspect. They seem pretty docile, pretty happy. Oh, here we go. So we're into our first frame here. Now this is an interesting pattern. So we've got nectar here, but if we look on the other side, we've got some capped brood. That is all worker brood. I don't see any, on the bottom of the frame, I don't see any drone brood. And I'm looking for the sun right now, so I can look into there to see if I can see eggs. And I don't see any eggs in this pattern, so we're going to keep moving, keeping a mental note as to where we saw that. Okay. Move this one aside. There we go. Lift that up a bit. Okay, we've got another frame here. No brood on there, capped or otherwise. Nectar and honey, nectar and honey. Drop that right back in. And as I get further out, back to the edge again, I don't suspect we'll see any more brood, but more complete honey frames. But I'm curious, so we'll keep taking a look. So we see sealed honey. On this side we see honey and nectar on the bottom there, not yet capped. Okay. Take a look at this last one. Then I'll close up this box, or put this box back together and go into the next box. Capped honey, capped honey. I'm going to move these back in line. I have to remember, and it comes with practice or with repetition, but I do remember that I did not take out the first one, I took out the second one. So I leave space in the center to put my second one in order to help make sure I don't roll any bees. I'll pull this to the edge, number 1 to the edge, and I'll push number 2 against number 3. And here I go. Remember, I've placed this in my stand. I'm going to let this gently go down. I won't let it push, but I'll let gravity do it. It gives the bees a bit of time to move out of the way. And here and there with a little guidance, just so that we hang it up correctly. Here we go. And then I'll move it away from the edge equally on each side, just to help maintain. Oops, got a little sting on the finger there. Pull that stinger out. Puff that to cover some of that scent. And just calm them down a little bit. box looks good. I'm going to move to the next one. And I typically go to each corner just to break it loose a little bit. We took a look in here and saw how much honey there was in here. I would say roughly 75–80% of the, well, even more than that, 85–90% of those frames were full of honey, each one weighing about 7 pounds. So this is going to be close to 75–80 pounds. So I need to be ready for that weight. Do a little twist, there we go. And again, I'll place on top, catty cornered, with the front in the same direction as the rest of the colony. Moving down into the box, we should see more brood here. You can see some spilled honey from the cells above. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 frames as well. Again, blonde box, 10 frames. Curiously, what I see here on the edges here, if the camera could come in closer, sealed in propolis are the larvae of wax moths. So the bees have become aware for that and they've capped it in propolis. I will scrape that out just so that there's no risk there. And I'll place it on top of my box so that I know to put it in with the trash or dispose of it later. A little bit of smoke, calming down again. I'm going to go to number 2 frame again, but I need to separate from number 1 so we're not fighting against it. So we've seen some sign of wax moths, nothing terrible. This looks like a very strong colony. I have yet to see any sign of small hive beetles, though I'm sure they're here. When I moved down here from Connecticut, I wasn't aware of how much of a problem small hive beetles were in Virginia, so I've learned to manage accordingly, and we seem to be doing okay. I lift this frame out. This is much lighter than the other one, so without looking immediately, I know there's empty cells, whether they are filled with egg, I shouldn't say empty, but not filled with honey. They could be filled with nectar, they could be filled with eggs. So we'll take a look. On this side, we see honey, as well as some nectar. On this side, I see lots of bee bread. Now, that's a good news. That means that they're building up, they're still raising and rearing young. That is their protein source. They need that to rear their young. Put that down in there gently so we're not rolling any bees as we go. And we'll take a look at frame number 1. This being on the edge, I don't expect to see anything here other than capped honey and or nectar. But we'll take a look, make sure of that. Beautiful capped honey on the outside. And on the inside, same thing. It's not completely full. You'll see this is a plastic frame, so they haven't built out the wax on the entire frame. I'll put that back in. I'll move to frame number 3. We get the sun is coming out again, which will make it easier for us when we need to start finding some eggs. This frame is very light. We see a good brood pattern on the outside. Some spots in there, which is to be expected, some here and there, but overall it's very good. I'm just going to gently place this down so I can point out to the camera. We see capped brood and brood of varying age. Turn this into the sun, make sure I can see eggs. Can't quite see eggs right now. I don't see any eggs in there currently in that spot. But this cap brood looks good. I don't see any perforations. Nothing looks sunken and sick. And you see on the outsides, on this side, not quite as nice of a pattern, but it's okay. Turn into the sun. I don't see eggs on here, which the queen may have moved on from there and moved closer to the center. We'll keep diving in, taking a look. This brood, it being mid-August, I don't think this will be the last generation this season, but this generation may raise our generation of winter bees. Take a look at this frame. It's quite light, quite a bit more brood. I don't see, oh no, there's some unsealed brood there as well. As we move to the outside, I see some very young brood. They're wet, which means there is royal jelly in there. They seem to be doing okay. And on this edge here, I see brood, a cap brood, some younger brood, and then I do see some eggs in there. Not a lot, but there's eggs on the outside here. I don't know if the camera can catch that. On this side, similar pattern. We'll move further in. I can see, looking down already, I can see this next box, or next frame, has lots of cap brood. So we've got a pretty strong colony here. Here we go, look at all that cap brood, and that's a fairly good pattern. Not too many holes. And some bee bread, not much, bee bread around the outside. This frame is almost entirely brood and capped. I haven't seen any queen cells or queen cups, which tells me that they seem to be happy with their current queen. Although I'd expect to see a queen cup or two just for emergencies. The sun just dipped away. We just lost some light for looking for eggs. And in these, there's lots of empty cells here, so I'm keeping an eye out for the queen as well as we move into here. I'm having a real tough time, I'm sorry, with no sun. I don't see any obvious signs of the queen on this frame, but because of that, she may be here. That's why I try to hold everything over the box. In case she drops off, she drops back into the colony. Okay, here we go. See more brood, cap brood, and some very young brood. I do see eggs on the outside. I don't know if the camera can pick that up with the lack of sun, but right in here I see eggs. As I keep an eye out for the queen. I don't see any queen at present. Although the eggs tells me that she was there at least a day ago. Frame number 8. Quite busy, lots of nurse bees on there. And it's curious that we see the brood on the outside and empty cells on the inside. Those empty cells are not empty, they do have some small, very young, and eggs. Young brood and eggs. And that brood looks like it's about a day old, or well, a day since hatching. And I don't know how difficult that is to see on the camera. I'm having trouble with the cloud cover seeing it with my eye. Okay. Number 9, take a look. I anticipate it's more the same, and we'll move down. This one's quite heavy, or heavier, which tells me there's quite a bit of honey on here. Yep, there's honey on that outside, and on the inside we have open cells, lots of bee bread. That's a good example of bee bread here. You can see how sticky and tarry it is. So this is, again, pollen and nectar mixed. The pollen they're using as their protein source to help rear their young. The nectar is used as their carbohydrate source. Okay. I'm not going to pull number 10 because I anticipate it follows the same pattern as everything else. This colony seems pretty strong, so I don't need to really pull that to continue investigating any kind of disease. And in order to make room for number 2, I'm going to slide these over, and I'll do more than one at a time. I try to keep them close. And if I move more than one frame over at a time, I feel I'm less likely to squish bees between frames because I'm moving one unit rather than 3 separate units. There we go, move that over. Here. That's so I'm hoping when we get down below we'll also see a queen. No, not also see it, we will see the queen. Oops, just dropped a few bees off. Let's do anything there. I will keep an eye out on those bees that dropped off and be careful where I step. It's possible that those bees were clustered because they were grouped around the queen. So I would hate to find out later on that she dropped into the yard. So I will pay attention to that spot and make sure either the bees have dissipated or if they're still clustered on the ground right there to investigate whether the queen has dropped out. Calm down a little bit. They seem to be getting a little more agitated, not terribly. And it looks like they're dissipating, so I think we're okay. Again, corner. Corner. Take a looking at the front here, and I'll look over at the rest of the boxes, make sure we're not getting robbing from any of the other colonies. One of the other negatives to I know my colonies are I do have 5 right here, right next to each other. That allows for drift, which is not necessarily, well, it isn't a good thing, but in our limited space, it's what we deal with. But with our large trees, our greenhouse, and our house right back there, and as well as the pump house behind us, there are lots of landmarks for the bees to focus in on. So on windy days, I think they have more trouble, but on a typical day, they return to their colony. All right, so I'm taking a look in here. This is not as full as the top 3 boxes. This is empty. This time of year, I want this to be more empty because I want the brood nest to move down. We'll take a look what's going on here. Loosen these up again. See some wax moths. I'll scrape that out, or wax moth larvae, caterpillars, and over here as well, along the edges. We'll break out number 2. These seem to be getting a bit more agitated as we've moved down. I don't know if that's because of the changing weather, which is what I would anticipate it to be. We've got more coming in. We are expecting storms this evening, so maybe they are coming in. Okay. Quite light. So you can see some brood that has not yet emerged. Taking a look here, I can see one actually chewing its way out now. You see here? This is a worker coming out. So she's been in there for just over 2 weeks, and there's lots of eggs in here. I can see lots of eggs all through here. So that's a good sign. We've got plenty of honey above them, plenty of protein in the form of bee bread, lots of eggs. This frame on this side here is full of eggs. So these guys are quite strong. Check, hold this over here. I'm just going to do a gentle drop. I don't like the way they're clustered there. I want to make sure that there's no queen there. Just drop there, and then I'm going to place the frame down here gently so as not to crush any, and I'll move into the box. So we've seen eggs, we've seen capped brood. I have not noticed any drone, which tells me that they know it's that time of year that they're getting close. They don't need to rear drone right now. They are most likely only rearing winter bees currently. Yep, no drone here. I don't see any actual drones here. I haven't seen any throughout the inspection, and I haven't seen any drone cells. I'd be concerned, well actually I wouldn't be concerned about that. There's always drone cells, unless the colony itself is dying worker's laying drone. Or queen's laying drone. Here we got some more. You see cap brood, that some of it's emerging already. Oh, here we go. Here we've got a small hive beetle. It's the first one we've seen. If I can get it, I will smush it. There we go. But these guys seem to be doing a pretty good job of keeping them at bay. One thing I should mention is the color of this wax. This was an overwintered colony, so this wax is a bit older. We'll start replacing that fairly soon. Lots of eggs around the edges here. Alright. These guys seem to be getting a bit more agitated. Thumb on the shoulder. So we'll mask their scent. Let's do a bit more. The weather must be changing and I'm sweating a bit, so they are becoming a bit angrier. But again, bees on all frames. These are, well, we've got, I don't see a queen. The sun is tucked away again. I do see brood. Trouble with the light seeing those eggs. Currently I can't make out eggs on here. I do see bee bread in the corner here, some small brood, lots of brood on this side. Oh, and eggs in the bottom of the frame here. So eggs towards the center, but not on the outside. There you go. Get lots of bee bread in there. And I see bee bread as well as eggs in here. I don't see the queen. I haven't seen the queen, but I haven't seen any drones either. We know the queen is present because of the age of the eggs. The fact that they are not yet brood, but they are still eggs, tells me that the queen was laying very recently. Could use a bit more smoke. They're clearly getting more agitated. Take a look in the front. You can see them climbing up the box. The colony itself is becoming a bit upset. So it's another light one. So this is most likely does not have any honey. Lots of bee bread, lots of bee bread. And this appears to be all bee bread. No eggs, I don't see a queen. I think we most likely have missed the queen on another frame. Overall, it looks like a healthy colony. I don't see any signs of K-wing or any real disease. Well, I can't see any disease that I've recognized. More this frame here, this is empty cells, and bee bread on this side. There may be eggs in here, but I don't have the sun to see it right now. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this colony. They were treated for mites earlier in the spring with mite away quick strips. I'm going to close this up now because they are agitated, and I expect to see more of the same here. I treat them with My Way quick strips in the spring, coming out of the winter. And then I do alcohol rolls throughout the spring, throughout the summer, spring and into the summer, and treat as needed. And in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're a bit further behind than you are up in New York, I will prophylactically treat with My Way quick strips again. Doing my final mite treatment as I wrap the colonies up for the winter. I'll use oxalic acid vapor, and I'll do that once I'm sure all the brood has emerged and that there's no sealed cells, and that sets them for the winter as far as their mite treatments. This colony looks to be in good health. There's still eggs being raised, which should be their winter stock. They've got plenty of reserves in this box right now, but I will keep an eye on that. Typically this time of year I inspect roughly every 3 weeks. In the summer I'll check more often, every 2 weeks or so. But at this time of year I want them to build up their strengths as best as possible, so I'll leave them alone and check every 3 weeks. Next time I check them, I will treat for mites with Mite-Aways. Carefully pick this up so I don't squish any as I'm lifting. And I gently slide that on. And the inevitable crush as we put boxes down, sending out the alarm pheromone, so I will use a bit of smoke to kind of calm them, as well as to clear them from the top as much as possible. Not too much smoke. Excuse me. And I want to get this colony back together. I see this behavior here. I'm afraid it might be robbing from the other colonies, so I want to get these put back together fairly quickly so that we don't get them into a robbing frenzy. This one is the heavy one. I will keep an eye on the front of these colonies to see if they're still bringing in pollen, and more importantly, keep an eye on the nectar. Once I see that start to drop, I don't necessarily have to open the box, but I put the inside cover on, and I'll put a feeder on top of that inside cover, and then I start feeding them sugar. Typically I feed sugar here in Virginia. I start feeding them to prep them for the winter starting in September, and I just feed them until it starts to freeze and we can no longer feed them sugar water. If you've noticed, I've kept off the queen excluder. I do that because I'm doing that now because I have it open. I don't see a need for it. She's got plenty of stuff down there. Anything they pack away is theirs now. We've already taken honey off of this. We're going to close this up. It's still quite hot. We're in a week of 90-degree days, so I will put the screen back on. But that's our colony inspection. We just close this up. Gently get them away from the sides. Occasionally use a bee brush, but I find smoke more effective. It doesn't anger them as much. There you go, put that right back on. Allows them to vent out well. A look. I can see some of the behavior on this board here is telling me that some of these are interlopers, so we are worried about robbing. We'll close it up. Thank you for joining us for our colony inspection. Thank you.